So being like really intentional with your social media and not just saying, hey, I post 3 times a week. Isn't that good? That's not very social. And actually, the social part is talking, interacting. So focus on that. It will make a huge difference, especially if you do it with consistency and regularity. If you build it into your calendar like you would with your prospecting time, your dialing time, it's going to make a big difference.
Because you and Daddy love each other so much.
Hello and welcome to another Monday Morning Mastermind recap where we summarize the mastermind put on by the Fast Forward Network, which is a group of agents that gets together every Monday on a live conference call via Zoom with literally hundreds of people, focusing on increasing their production, increasing the productivity and the skills that they have to do more business with less amount of effort and work, and fast forward past the difficult learning hurdles that we all have so that we can learn from those others in the group that have already been there and done that. So, as usual, we cover a few main topics produced by people in the group to ask questions about something they're working on in their business. And of course, with hundreds of other people online at the same time, somebody has got experience in that field and they always speak up and lend a hand. So today we're covering a few things. First of all, how to really optimize your elevator pitch, whether you're talking to your sphere, potential clients, or even networking partners. Dealing with no-shows on appointments, specifically in the internet lead variety, and creative ways to connect with your sphere of influence. So let's jump into the first one right away, talking about your elevator pitch. Also known as an impact statement of such, you're basically looking for a brief statement, keep it under 60 seconds, 30 seconds would even be better, or less, that you're going to basically say something that stays with them, something that impacts them, helps them remember who you are in the future. Something that's not boring and just you carry on, something that maybe even give them pause and ask another follow-up question about that, as opposed to, okay, check that box, moving on with the how's your day conversation. The key point is to say it all the time. You want to use it regularly so it just flows naturally. You want it to come off the tip of your tongue without any thought and just get it out there with consistency all the time. One great example, I guess, that someone kind of raised her hand and she said, hey, let me tell you what I do. And she said, basically, yeah, I'm Cody Brown. I'm in real estate. But what makes me different is that my goal is to really impact our local community here through my business. So that makes you want to think, how are you going to impact our local community here through your business? Clearly leading into a new and different conversation. So very great example of some impact statement that's being used. Another thing to consider is to try and state that impact statement without using the word realtor or real estate, so that they're intrigued by your statement and want to ask how, similar to what Cody did, even though she addressed the real estate piece up front. It depends on who you're talking to. We took a bit of a pause and a break and really spoke on that concept. If you have the luxury of knowing who you're talking to, you can have it hand catered and delivered to the person in front of you. So if you can quickly figure out what that person's problem is, well, then you can pitch how what you do is a solution for that problem. So an example would be, if you're talking to somebody who's in a renting situation and never has owned before, maybe you say something to the effect of, yeah, actually what I do is help first-time home buyers secure that first home and do it with better than average interest rates. I mean, that's intriguing, right? If you focus on me, which is a first-time home buyer, and you do it by giving me something even more that I want, which is a lower rate, well, shoot, you seem to me, you're my man. Let's hear more. I want to hear more about that. And that's a great example of an impact statement spoken directly to your audience. For the same example, if you're in a large room full of doctors, you're going to speak to that group differently than you would that first-time home buyer that we just spoke to. So if you have that luxury, of course you want to custom tailor it, but The true elevator pitch is the example of you're standing in an elevator, you make acquaintance with somebody, and quickly, what are you going to do, and how are you going to say it before you get to the top and get off on the elevator? So that you don't always have that luxury. So kind of going on the idea of, you want to know who you're talking to. If you happen to know that you are talking to a seller, for example, as opposed to a buyer, well, you can keep in mind the fact that people are not only impacted by emotionally driven stimuli or remarks, but also data driven. So maybe to that person, you say something like, well, hey, I'm JC, and actually I help people sell their homes twice as fast than the competition here in town. That's just a brief, that leaves the person wanting more. How do you do that? How can you prove it? Blah, blah, blah. So those are some great points on, custom tailoring your impact statement to the person you're speaking to. So if you're new to the industry or to the neighborhood or whatever, and maybe you don't feel like you have that much to fall back on and to really puff your chest out and brag about, well, that's fine. Share your journey, because people who are relocating, for example, to the area where you are new to will associate and relate to what you have shared. If there are, for example, maybe some helpful info and tips on how to move through this process and through the obstacles to relocating faster than if they were doing it on their own. So you can't really lose here. All it takes is a little bit of introspection, understanding of what experience and value you have to offer, and use that in your elevator pitch. We'll wrap this section with one of the old Tom Ferry lines that I've heard him say from the stage a million times, which is, whenever people ask you, how's the market? You don't just say, oh gosh, it's been hard on me, business has slowed down, or wow, it's been amazing, the market's going really strong, because what does that do? It's just responding to how the market is in general. The appropriate response is, well, it kind of depends on your perspective. Are you considering buying, or maybe selling, or possibly investing? What do you have in mind? Because the market is different for various people in that market. Hey, that's a different response, right? So we can take the same approach to that how's the market question and tweak that into our elevator pitch idea, and then explain, why whatever their needs are perfectly met with our specialty. And we can then invite them to the next event that we have, to a Zoom, to a consult in person, whatever it is, what would be a natural next step for that person, depending on if they said, I'm an investor, I need to sell my place, I want to buy for the first time, whatever it is, you now know what the appropriate follow-up is. All you have to do is make sure that you don't just drop it there, and that you actually take that conversation to the next level. So we're going to wrap it there on elevator pitches and move on to a tough reality in our industry, no-shows, especially when it comes to pay-per-click and internet leads. So before we get into it too much, we have to understand that somebody who came through a portal, for example, like maybe a Zillow Flex call, where they are connected to you on a live call from someone who works at Zillow and says, I'm connecting you to JC now. And your main purpose is to find out where they want to go, and if there's any other properties they want to see besides that one, and set the appointment to go see them. Now your job is to do the actual conversion, the relating to them, the introduction, the building rapport in person, instead of doing that on the phone. So if that's not the case, right? What are we doing with these internet leads? Well, we need to qualify them well. When we're finally booking that appointment. And to be clear, internet leads are long and slow, and they take a lot of follow-up. In our office, we've got, I think it was around a 40,000 leads sample set that we studied, and found that it took 26 call or contact attempts via call, text, and email to get someone to produce one inbound response, and then to actually get the conversation going. So 26 efforts, whether that's you making calls 26 times, or you have a system that's sending an email or a text message, whatever the case may be, it's going to take some effort. These are not the same as a portal lead looking to buy a house right now. So once we get to that point where we actually have contact with them and we are going to book that appointment, we need to remind them of why they're meeting with you in the first place. Are they just curious? Have they been looking for a while and have finally found that perfect property for them and simply need your help with it? Those are very different types of situations right there. So the person who's just curious may still need a whole nother 6 months or a year of follow-up. Where the person who has been looking forever and just hasn't seen really what suits their needs and finally found it, now they feel a sense of urgency. They finally found the one they're looking for and they've reached out to you about it. So understand where they're coming from and use that with your appointment booking conversation and talking points. So beyond that, you have to always make sure that there's plenty of follow-up between the time you set that appointment and the time of the appointment. If you get the chance, make a letter introduction if it's a buyer. Make sure you're getting responses via text and follow up. If there's one huge trick that you can do, if for lack of a better term, use a calendar invitation. Calendar invitations have proven, and this is another, not the same study that we did in our office, but one of the other agents on the mastermind said they've done studies and they dramatically increase the show rates when you simply send someone that calendar invitation. When you go to meet them, we've talked about this before in our mastermind recaps. Offer them coffee, but don't say, hey, would you like some? Say, I'm going to grab you a coffee. What would you like? I'm here a little bit early, something to that extent. Now you're automatically doing something, and it's just a simple response that kind of locks them in. And make sure that in general, not just a couple tips like we're talking about here and there, but make sure you have a procedure and a system in place to affirm, not necessarily confirm, but to affirm that appointment, meaning you're not leaving that door open for them to cancel and you saying, hey, I just wanted to make sure you're still planning on coming. That's weak. Explain, hey, we're going to be ready. I'm going to have water ready for you. If there's I've got some snacks. I'm going to have some documentation. Maybe send them some of that documentation ahead of time. Make them understand that you are putting some time and energy and you are blocking out your calendar for them, and remind them of the reason for that appointment in the first place, and come up with a system of whatever it is you're going to do to make sure that that comes up. Tell them what to expect and to keep a lookout for information inside. And in general, let me take a step back. What you want to do when setting these appointments is make them as close to today as possible. If you can meet with them later today and it's this morning, fantastic. If you can keep it inside a 48-hour window, that's optimal. I just had one that unfortunately, because the person was out of town, I can't remember the details, they pushed it out. It was like a week and a half out, and the person no-showed. I wasn't too surprised because there was just a lot of time in between the time that we set the appointment and the time. So despite the calendar events, despite the text messages reminding them at 8 something in the morning, same day, despite some good procedures, didn't come together because frankly, that person probably forgot why they were incentivized to meet with me in the first place. So the longer the lead time, the higher chance that lead will flake out on you, unfortunately. Use a BombBomb video or something like it so that there is not just a voice on the phone, but they now have a face and mannerisms to match to the voice, to the person that set the appointment with them, so they know who they will be meeting up front when they come. That's another huge piece. If you're going to create a workflow between time of setting appointments and the day of, make a video introduction part of that. If you have access to HighNote, we talk about HighNote all the time. Send a HighNote link with various assets. You can control video links. It can, contain video links. It can contain, your reviews. It can contain helpful information, prepping them to what it is you're going to be speaking about in the appointment. HighNote is a great way to send information and pre-sell them on the appointment in the first place. Because, when it comes to these appointments, we're really only as good as our last contact with that prospect, according to them, in their eyes, So let's see here. If you are using auto drips, if you're doing something to help with the heavy lift that it actually takes to get someone to move from internet lead to in-person appointment, make sure you turn those off as soon as you get that appointment set. You don't want any funky messaging or some off-the-cuff remark that was part of your drip going out now that you've actually had communication and might go in conflict with what you've said in person over the phone with them. You don't want to throw them off with something weird. And where are they in the phase? Where are they in the process? So we talk about funnels a lot, and we talk about top of funnel versus bottom of funnel, and bottom of funnel is clearly a lot closer to transacting, right? And so the pay-per-click leads are typically closer to the discovery phase, which is a little higher in the funnel. They're not necessarily that high intent phase, where they want to take action now and want to get going. So there's a good chance this could take a year or two of nurture before you actually transact with somebody. So be aware of that. Don't have wrong expectations for an internet lead that came in thinking they are going to be like a Zillow Flex lead that wants to transact in the next 1 to 3 weeks. That's not going to be the case with the majority of people who are coming in through a pay-per-click lead. And when we talk about internet and pay-per-click leads, we're mostly talking about Google, right? And pay-per-click on Google. If you switch it to a pay-per-click on Facebook, you're even higher up the funnel. Because at least with Google, there are some keywords that you're targeting that they have typed in, they're searching for something. With Facebook, they're not even searching for anything. They're just scrolling along, and you happen to interject a cool looking house or some information that caught their eye, and they clicked on it, and now they become a lead. So that person may have no intent. They just were scrolling and saw something you threw out there, and it was sharp enough to catch their eye. So just be aware of what kind of leads these are and what the experience that consumer is having in order to get in front of you, to give you their phone number and their name, and to actually receive a call from you. The national average, 1 out of 100 of these are going to convert inside the first year. So keep it in mind. Again, like I said before, use text messages and automations for leads like this. And yeah, make sure you've got at least a 1-year plan with an automation or kind of a text system going out. And if you got lots of different portals or different ways that you have leads coming at you, you're going to want to have them custom tailored to that experience that person came in on. If it came in through a portal, if it came in through pay-per-click, came in through Facebook, came in through something else, you want to understand where that is and have a custom tailored system going out to speak to them, even though it's not you typically physically typing that each message out. Somebody has done it once and custom tailored it to that lead portal. So keep that stuff in mind. That's about it for pay-per-click. I hope that's helpful for you. We're going to move on to the final topic we covered this morning, which is creative and outside the box ways to connect with your sphere of influence. So this is definitely one of my strong points. I have an extensive touch point every year. I am doing something, whether it's a call, text, email, physical invitation to an event or something, or an electronic notification through a system like HomeBot that keeps people up to date on their home's value and comparable sales every month. There's some way that I touch them, and it amounts to 79 times a year. And these are for my past clients primarily, and a little bit for my sphere. So you've got to be on it. You've got to do that, and you've got to be creative with the way you do it. So one of the first things that was brought up is pretty obvious. Let's get active on social media and not just posting a bunch of stuff about yourself and your business and your family all the time. Let's go ahead and focus on them. So one trick you can do for Facebook is you can create lists. So you can have a whole Facebook list of your friends that are your past clients or your sphere of influence or both. There's less leeway with Instagram. You can do like a favorites list, and you can have that be whatever targeted list you want to do. And the cool thing about making these lists is you can actually set time in your calendar to essentially prospect again, to reprospect your sphere of influence and past client list. And instead of posting and focusing, I mean, you need to post as well about yourself and what you're doing, but instead of focusing on that, focus on them, commenting, being happy for them, being sad for them, whatever the case is, being aware of what's going on, what they're sharing with their lives, because you've made a list of people that you want to focus on, and go in and don't just give it a double tap and a like or a thumbs up, but actually go in and make a comment that shows you're human, that you actually care about them. Better yet, you can do GIFs or even videos of yourself and DM them to them. So being like really intentional with your social media, not just saying, hey, I post 3 times a week. Isn't that good? That's not very social. Actually, the social part is talking, interacting. So focus on that. It will make a huge difference, especially if you do it with consistency and regularity. If you build it into your calendar like you would with your prospecting time, your dialing time, it's going to make a big difference. We've talked a lot about client appreciation events in the past, and one guy raised his hand today and said, what about if you just throw yourself a birthday party and invite everybody out? You can do it at a brewery, you can do it at some event or some location where there's plenty of space. You can invite a ton of people. And the cool thing, the cool thing about the birthday party is that there's no like automatic expectation that these people are going to be taken care of and paid for food or drinks or prizes or whatever else. It's for you. So like most people are going to want to be buying you drinks. Most people are going to be wanting to take care of you because it's your party that you've invited them to. Even the brewery or the bar, whatever it is you're at, like might say, hey, we got your drink for the night or something like that. So it's a very interesting paradigm shift on a client appreciation event. This guy says he does it every June. His birthday's in June, so he throws a big party at some venue near his area of expertise. And he loves it. That's what he does. So that's a creative, outside the box way of thinking. And maybe if you're actually going to have a birthday party, maybe have a small private one for like your family or something like that. But this is something that he does for his entire sphere and past client database, and it was a great idea. Another great idea to kind of play on the concept of having a client appreciation event without having that event is to invite people to things that you're going to go to, but you're not necessarily hosting. So, we've given the example before of one of the top team leads here in the county who actually has teams in other regions in other states as well. We're in San Diego, so he goes across the border and he helps periodically. I don't know if it's once a quarter or twice a year, something like that. And he builds homes for the needy in Tijuana. Right? So he invites everybody to that. Now, do you think most people in general are going to take him up on it? No. Most people that want to go down, get their hands dirty and help build a home in the dirt for the homeless or for the needy in Mexico, that's going to be a burden on their heart that they want to go and do. And maybe they're going to do it regularly, or maybe they only do it once in their life, but it's something they really want to do. It's not necessarily something that you're going to go, oh, you know what, my weekend's free, I'm going to go do that as well. But guess what? They're going to be glad that they were invited. And even if they don't go, they're thinking positively about John because he's doing something good for mankind. So, and that's kind of uber altruistic. I mean, if you could be doing something as basic as going to the local Oktoberfest that your city where you work in and that you focus on is throwing. And you can say, hey, I'm going to this. We're gathering up a group. Let me know if you want to come. And now you could do the same thing. You're inviting a ton of people to a fun event, and you don't even have any outlay. All you're doing is being an attendee, but you can act as the conductor, as the organizer for your specific group. And now another reason to reach out to people because, like I've said a ton of times, it's not necessarily about the event you're throwing or what you're doing. It's about the thought that counts and the fact that you reached out via phone, text, email, or even a written invitation that actually means something. They're going to remember you because you thought of them, not because of what you thought of them to go do, if that makes sense. If you haven't gotten tuned in to send out cards, you should look into it. It's a great system that you can actually set up automations the same way you would an email, but it actually sends out physical cards for people's birthdays, for people's anniversaries, for their kids' birthdays, for their dogs, whatever it is, because you can sign up for an account and there's different amounts I guess of people that you can have in there, but there are not limits to how many cards you can send out. So it's a great use of snail mail. And people, frankly, don't get a ton of snail mail if it's not junk or bills anymore. So that's something that can set yourself apart is an actual no. Now, it's not actually handwritten, right? It is printed, but it looks handwritten. It's written in cursive with blue ink, so it's as close as it gets, and it's again the thought that counts. So I'll wrap up with a system that I haven't used before, but it sounds really intriguing. It's called Celebrity Agent. One agent raised her hand and she said that she loves it. So basically, it's kind of like send out cards, but it's more specified to the client, and this is going to be less focused on. I think you can use it for your past clients in your sphere to stand out and to nurture them, but it sounds like it's a little bit of a better use case for farming and or focusing on newer leads. And the idea is that it's a handwritten card or letter that you can either send all your clients, or you can send it to like an investor group, or you can send it to a farm in a neighborhood, for example. And what it'll do is it writes a letter explaining to them that you have a buyer looking for exactly what they need. For example, in the farming, let's say you're looking for sellers and you're sending it to a farm. It actually pulls in public record data that says, my buyer's looking for a home just like yours. That's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath with 1,800 square foot in this part of town. And it reads as though this is a customized letter that someone took the time to go look, find somebody who has a home like that, and now I'm reaching out for them. But you didn't do that at all. The technology did that for you. So Celebrity Agent, like I said, I haven't used it myself yet, but someone in the group spoke highly of it and said to definitely check it out. So that's going to wrap it up for today. I hope that this has been helpful for you as usual, and that topics about your elevator pitch, dealing with no-shows, and of course connecting with your sphere are things that are going to be important to you, and hopefully you found something that you can implement into your business today. As always, I'm happy to chat about any of this. Feel free to DM me right here, and look forward to talking to you soon.